Hey everyone, welcome to Expansion Cast. Expansion Cast is a magical podcast I created so people could find simple or unconventional solutions to expand their personal awareness and experience. This podcast is dedicated towards revealing people's divine truth and how that divine truth works its way out into the world, one by one, helping liberate each of us on our personal path to freedom. If you love this podcast, please give us a rating and share. Hey everyone, thanks for coming back. Roger here with Expansion Cast. Today on the show we have Marcus Fung. Marcus is, now this is a bit of a mouthful, he is a regenerative culture artist. He is also an earth, ancestral, and community ritualist, along with a sound and healing practitioner. It's a lot of interesting titles to have. And this is a very interesting interview, fun interview. And if you're looking for a little bit more fun in your life, maybe a way to play some games that bring out metaphors in your world and maybe bring some awareness to where you need to be, where your power is, or where you're hiding, this would be a good podcast for you to tune into. So I'd like to welcome you to the original Marcus Fung. So Marcus, welcome to Expansion Cast.
Hey, thanks, Roger.
Hey, anytime. What are we going to talk about today? What's happening for you?
Oh gosh, that's a pretty big topic. What do we want to talk about? I don't know. I think in some levels, I'm trying to dial back in my mind how we met. I think that will help to kind of, bring things in full circle, if you know what I mean, and kind of appreciate the journeys that we've been on. Because I don't think I've seen you for at least 10 years or something like that.
It's a long time, long time. We met at, the first time was at, you came to Lethbridge and put on a drum circle.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe it wasn't a drum circle, but it was definitely a drumming event.
That's what I thought. Did you used to have longer hair? Like a ponytail?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay, so we went through, yeah, okay. So we were both in Alberta, and I do remember now. Oh, well, what's on my mind is well, I mean, of course, COVID, the whole COVID situation is kind of, it's like an echo right now, that seems to be, at least in Canadian and US media, definitely seems to be undershadowing the racial tensions and the riots and the protests that are happening all over America. And of course, that's kind of in the shadow and the echo of where my parents and my people are from is Hong Kong, in China, and a lot of racial tensions there. So, that's always on the radar. And of course, how I choose to navigate that and how I'm stumbling through that, as well as how I observe other people navigating through that, and, noticing all of the internal resistances and checking and overwhelm, confusion, and of course, in that context, how I navigate the world in general, according to my values, my beliefs, how I understand the world to operate, how I understand the forces that are at play, all the agendas that it takes to make a world happen, if that makes sense. Just because I know your cast is called Expansion Cast, and I'm assuming that maybe listeners also enjoy maybe zooming in and out on that axis of awareness of taking things in perspective, on different levels of perspective.
That's a great perspective.
Yeah, there's I'm thinking of, because we are in Alberta, and in the traditional indigenous territories of the Cree and the Blackfoot, Dene, and many other indigenous First Nations. There's a term in Cree that's actually called Wakotowin, something like that. It was never a direct teaching that I received, but it was something that I've heard over and over again, and something that really, to me, was a key to helping to understand how much attention do I put on which level? And basically, Wakotuin speaks something to the level of like the personal, the familial, the community, the city or the village or the tribe, to the planet, to the galaxy, something like that. There's like an axis of that, and it's something like a spiral. And to whoever's listening, it's just an idea of kind of checking in. Well, where are we resting in or investing a lot of our energy? Whether that's intentionally or unintentionally on one level of the spectrum, and are we able to be fluid in transitioning and pivoting, and is it more beneficial? Uh, what's beneficial at this time, and is it important to keep a balance of how we're looking at things?
I think that's a good, really good perspective and thought, because with all the stuff that's happening out there, the one thing we tend to ignore is the energy body, and how our energy body is trying to communicate to us our truth, our essence.
Mm,
And we get caught up in all these media frenzies and Facebook and all this kind of stuff, and we start to lose perspective from our energy body, from our heart center, from our power center, even from our genitals.
mm.
It's a huge drop of awareness of the self.
I'm laughing because in light of these recent events, and I want to also say that they're not the only events that are happening, but they're the ones that are getting a lot of attention. And but you don't really hear a lot of people talking about their genitals in the same conversation. So thanks for that. It brings some levity to.
Yeah, it's funny, I've just been part of a tantra week-long online workshop, and I'm on day 5. And the workshop, there's over 100 workshops in this thing, and it's just amazing. And the one I just finished before we got on this call was about our genitals,
Mm,
and about communicating with them and listening to them, and
mm,
how we abuse them. Or
mm-hmm,
it's funny because we don't want to abuse our heart in any way, and we want to
mm,
guard that. But
mm,
so many people disregard their genitals
mm,
as something foreign, something
mm-hmm.
that needs to be suppressed.
Yeah, I totally relate with that. I mean, especially, I mean, you and I being male-bodied, or at least, from what I can tell, my genitals stick out. And how often do I feel like it's just this extension? It's not really an extension of me. It's like this thing that kind of sometimes withers away, and it's like, oh, hey there, uh, hi, hello, shame, and all these other things, and this kind of love-hate relationships with it. And I'm wondering if it's different for female bodies, where is that it goes within, it's a cavity, it's a recess, and it's versus the male being a protrusion.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and unfortunately, we don't have a female. Yeah, I'm 100% male, so
Yeah, well, if you're out there, you can let us know.
yeah.
And I'm
And
wondering if it's more around like even the way that the dissociation happens, because I'm hearing you talk about the dissociation and the abuse, you know, whereas something that protruding, it's like, I ignore it, I cut it off, I ignore it, I'm ashamed of it, where maybe like a recess in the female genital, there's a different kind of archetypal quality of what you might put in a cave or in a, I don't know, I'm just speaking out of my ass here, but if I was, so I'm curious about if people experience different kinds uh, of wounding and shame around their genitals, from different sexes. Yeah.
Well, I think the wounding and the shame is felt the same way. I
Mm,
think sometimes the source comes in the same way, but how we um, create blame outside of ourselves or blame towards ourselves might be a bit different, and how long we hang on to the shame. I mean, I have shame. Yeah, I think we all do. Oh,
Mm.
so anyway, yeah, that's where I've been. Yeah, for sure. But so Marcus, you've been talking a lot about community and trying to pull what appears, and I mean, it seems like you're trying to pull community together through voice and online basically. And I think it's a great thing to do. How's that working out?
That's a good question. I'm curious what you mean by voice. What do you mean by that? Like, because I've got a couple different projects on the go.
So, well, I just see the projects that you're doing over Zoom and Facebook, and so
Right.
live voice and video.
Right.
Uh, I,
Kind of like video. Right. Like a
so I
dialogue.
say, yeah, I say voice because you're not really in close proximity to these people.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a big topic, community, and I would say to anybody listening, it's like, hey, at any given time, how satisfied are you with the communities that you belong to? Do you feel like you belong to a community? Does you feel like that community will show up for you? Do you feel seen and heard by that community? Is your family able to be a part of that community, or is that separate? These are questions that I've been experiencing. I've been sitting with, and often it comes from a place of feeling like I don't have that community. I mean, sure, I belong to like many, many circles, um, and there's different aspects of community that we've explored. From intentional gatherings, festivals, um, eating together, creating together men's circles, meditation communities, collegial communities, and they've all given me something. And then, of course, there's my very own neighborhood that I live in. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the projects that you're primarily seeing, which is a, a, a kind of a podcast that I've been toying with, which is called Weaving Communities Wisdom. It was born from a need, and that need is born from my own longing for community. And that longing for community, recognizing that, like, hey, there's a lot of people out there on Facebook that are also part of my community. And I decided to try to, I mean, the whole thing's an experiment, but what I'm trying to go for is to be a little bit of a bridge between all these different communities that I've belonged to, or that I'm, attached to, or, that are tangential, but may never have a chance of cross pollinating with one another. So I've been featuring different voices, um, different age groups, different nationalities, different races, different roles in communities, and hoping that there's going to be some kind of a chance for people to, hear a voice that may be connected to their community, but maybe one circle apart, right? I mean, one of my favorite examples is, the other day we had Owen Peltier and Stan, and he was an ex-Indigenous gang member for 12 years. He talked about how now for people who are kind of in the kind of quote unquote spiritual community, that may be that may be just one or two worlds apart, right?
Mhm.
And but to me, that's a circle that I have am invested in for several different reasons. And I thought it was great that people who might not ordinarily get a chance to hear a story like that, um, would get to touch base. And that all started from seeing footage on my Facebook of my friend's son who's native getting kind of beaten up by the cops, right? And so it's been a way to kind of, like, you're right, pull together community is the word you used, I guess. Bridge bridge is another way, and it does seem to be creating some sense of togetherness, um, in that kind of vague amorphous way on Facebook. Um, that is not the same as like me coming up to you and barbecuing with you and then helping you load your truck and then meditating together or something like that, right? It's same but different.
So let's play with this for a little bit. Let's play with community and the desire for community, because I find, I think in each of our chakras, we have a different desire that resides in each one, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
believe each of our chakras is energetic, and it's always reaching out to connect.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that connection is, I believe, what's important, and that's what the reaching is for a community. And what part of you is looking for that connection and community? Is it, is it your mind? Is it that chakra? Is it your heart chakra? Or is it, a combination of parts of
Mm.
your body?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Roger, and I think it kind of connects to the concept that we introduced Wakoto in. There's like a axis, and by pivoting on that axis, we can get different perspectives. But they form one axis. And so I've never really thought about it like this, which is great. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm not that familiar with it, but I have a physical need. I want affection, I want snuggles, I want a mate, I want a lover, I want a partner, I want a relationship.
So where does that
Um,
reside in your body?
Oh, I mean, that's definitely like in my lower, in my lower chakras, right? Like in my root and my sacral, even I want people to wrestle with, right? Like that's all kind of lower. And I also need people to pray with, I need people to perform ritual with and sing with. Those are probably, higher heart, throat. And I need people to learn from. And I need people who find what I have to share valuable, and I want to be connected with people who I find what they have to share valuable. Um, so there's definitely, and then there's people that I want to, I want to challenge my thoughts. Uh, that's definitely like, maybe more up here. I haven't really been relating to the chakra system that much these last few years.
Mm-hmm.
I used to more so maybe, and I don't know why. I just haven't really used that lens. But it's an interesting way of uh, of just pivoting and just feeling into it. And it actually helps to take me more into my body. I appreciate that.
So when you were speaking, the what I felt the most emotion with was actually wrestling. Like I, to me, I felt a fun emotion coming up in you, like the
Mm,
need to just laugh and have a good time or something with people.
totally. That's a big need of mine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. I want to spend some more time playing in the chakras, if you will. I'm doing it right now as we speak.
yeah. So yeah, for me, one of the things I've always been deep into healing and just exploring, shame and all sorts of things that have caused me to limit my experience.
Mm,
And I mean, somebody said to me a while ago while I was hosting one of my unity circles was, can we, can it be more fun? And I'm like, can it be more spontaneous? And I'm like,
mm.
oh, everything in me was like, no, it has to be a specific way because this is what works. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and I felt that was like such a limiting voice of mine. And then so I completely changed it. And now I just flow in spontaneous
Wow.
exploration. And it's made a huge difference. And it's amazing to see how we can actually experience healing while having fun. It doesn't have to be
Yeah.
so fucking serious.
Whew, yeah, I feel you on that. And I remember when you approached me for this podcast, you were like, we don't it's be in flow, the time we start, the time the topic, and I'm so in resonance with that. It's a big value of mine to go with the flow and and not take things too seriously. But on the other hand, I have a very, very serious side to me, very, very serious. And especially when I'm by myself or if I have it, it's easier for me to have fun with other people and and to be spontaneous when I'm with other people. They're just kind of help to bring to be a muse for that. And there's times actually when I feel so dead serious around other people when they're having fun, like I feel hopelessly serious. And I remember one time I was there and some guy started tickling me because he thought I was being so serious. And I was kind of annoyed with him, but I was like, hey, Okay, I get it. I'm like really stiff right now, but there are things that are very serious. So I can appreciate both of I can
Yeah.
appreciate what you were saying. And I think good on you for, exploring another end of the spiral, which is more spontaneous and flowing. And I think form and structure have its place. Um, especially in rooting energy and creating a container for spontaneity so that people can be safe in that.
Yeah, but what is that safety? What is that? Is that a limiting belief? Is that something that's just we put it out there so that we can be comfortable where we are, so we can become vulnerable? That doesn't even make sense to me. On the spectrum of vulnerability, if we're
Mm.
creating a safe space, how vulnerable are we?
Well, I think that's a great question, and I can see it's getting lit up a little bit here because maybe we might even have maybe disagree a little bit on this. But
Awesome.
yeah, for me as someone who's facilitated groups of people for probably a good better part of my life, maybe 10, 12, 13, 14 years. There seems to be, I mean, there's some people you can work with and they're just ready to roll. Like everyone's feeling comfortable. People are feeling resourced in their bodies. They don't even need a facilitator. And there's other people, and you try using that same approach with another group of people, and people will look at you like you're crazy, and they're not ready to go on that journey with you because they're not feeling confident they're not willing to take a risk. They're worried about being judged by their peers, and I'm talking about kind of expressive circles, whether it be drumming or singing or dancing or moving or playing, laughter yoga, and it's part of that. It's part of the wounding of being an adult. I mean, teenagers too. Teenagers, even grade sixers. I find working with young children, they don't have that as much. They're a little bit shy, but when they start getting about grade 4, 5, 6, they start feeling ashamed and they start looking at their peers and seeing what their peers are thinking of them. That kind of self consciousness starts kicking in. So no, I don't think it's a
Mhm.
limiting belief. I think it's people naturally through their life experience are conditioned to protect themselves, and if a facilitator can help create safety and trust, trusting our own capacity, trusting the facilitator to hold the group, that they're not going to put people on the spot like, all right, Roger, now just freestyle rap about what's happening in politics. Go, like you might be really terrified to do that because there are some kinds of acts that require a lot of courage, um, that that pit us and decenter us to a way that we really can't prepare for it. So I think, yes, it is a limiting belief, like you said, and you should always stretch yourself. But from a point of view as a group facilitator, my job is to help make things easier for people to drop into that space, trust each other, trusting me as a facilitator so I don't have to facilitate as much. And then they can start, they realize that they've got each other's back in the circle and that they're willing to take a risk together and be vulnerable together.
Yeah, it totally makes sense, and I actually agree with you. I think we're actually in total agreement because I feel that when people are first starting to express, there needs to be a gentleness.
Mm,
There needs to be somebody that sees them, that can create a space where, yeah, they feel like like the risk is mitigated somehow.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. That there's a vested, maybe people are investing in the risk together and it's not just one person.
Mhm.
Why should I take this risk alone? And I think that's the beauty, that's the real team building aspect of being in a circle together or being in a community together. That's great.
What do you think of trigger therapy?
Do you mean like trying to heal triggers or do you mean like triggering people to as part of their therapy?
Triggering people as part of their therapy.
Oh, I've never really heard of that. And it's cool. I'm appreciating that your lens or one of the approaches that you naturally are leaning towards is, kind of healing and therapy. And it's definitely something that I've spent a lot of time exploring. I'm not looking through that lens as much this last year. Um, and I just want to say one of my mentors, former mentors, he brought up a really good point, which was not all triggers are bad, or trigger wounded or traumatic feelings or emotions. You can also have positive triggers, right? Like things that trigger you into your gratefulness of life and that trigger your inner genius and trigger your connection to the divine, trigger your, your brilliance, like your inner clown. You know what I mean? Like there's all
Mm.
kinds of triggers, and I think some people call them anchors, like in positive hypnotherapy, and they try to trigger certain states of being.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of triggering people in therapy, um, it's cool. I've never heard of that. I'm just imagining it could be very helpful. I'm imagining there needs to be some kind of training and proficiency on the point of on the point of the practitioner to help the client feel safe. Because I remember there was this guy that used to roll around town, and he used to call himself, by a certain name, and I swear that was what he would do. He would just try to trigger you, and he would look for those triggers. And I remember I was eating this sandwich. It was this really good sandwich at this cafe. It was cranberry and turkey brie, and it was such a good sandwich. And he's like, "Hey, can I have some of that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And I gave it to him, and he ate it, and he just looked at me as he ate all of it. And I was like, dude, aren't you gonna like save some for me at least? Like, or he saved me like a very, very tiny piece. And I swear, I mean, he used to call himself God. That was his name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was a very controversial character in our community. And I swear he did that on purpose. Like, he knew exactly what he was doing because it brought up so much feelings. Because I was trying not to be judgmental, I was trying to be nice and generous, but actually, I wanted that sandwich for myself. Did I
Mm-hmm.
like him? Do I want him to be part of my life? Do I want him to be a teacher? No, hell no. I think you can use your skill in triggering people any way you like, but I never asked you to be my teacher. I never put any trust in that. So it has no value to me. In fact, I just find him annoying, which is triggering, but if I have any kind of sense of, I would see it working very potently, in a kind of in a container. I think it
In
could
a
be very
container
potent.
where you said, "I'm ready," right?
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So tell me what, if I had to ask you, I'm going to ask you, who is Marcus? And not the identity that you've put around, not the music you play, but inside, who is Marcus? What would you say?
I would say I'm something like a cascading awareness of intelligences, of multiple intelligences, of multiple gates of sensory awareness and perception, that's in a kind of a dance of longing to be at rest in some kind of stillness as the waves and the cascading sometimes is like much like a storm, and sometimes it's like a quiet scene by the ocean. And yeah, it's like an eternal dance to falling in and out of some kind of sense of center through all this kind of cascading, you know, multiple intelligences that seem to work and speak through me.
Hmm. And have you said that before? Or is that
No, that
is
was
it
that
kind of
was
flow?
nice. I like that.
Yeah. All right.
I didn't pre-write that. That was something that I appreciated that being asked, and I've played similar dyad games like that, where you spend time and just keep asking each other that, and I value those experiences, and I kind of hungry for them because I think we need that opportunity to practice responding to that, not just responding to it, but by you know positioning our awareness to try to grasp what we truly are.
Yeah. Do you have a game you want to play? Where the heck were we?
You said you wanted to play a game.
Oh yeah. So do you have any games in mind? Are you
I can't think of one right now, particularly that I want to play. Oh, we should tell a story.
Hmm,
So how about this?
okay.
We'll do well because there's only two of us. Maybe we'll do. I like doing beginning, middle, end, but that means it's need one more player. But well, why don't we just tell a couple short stories like beginning, middle, end, and then that way it'll be like beginning, me, you, middle, me, end, and then you beginning, me, middle, you, end. That way we both get to take turns saying the beginning and the beginning and the end.
So we're gonna play a game, and it's a story game, and
Storytelling game.
we're gonna start with you doing the beginning, me middle, you end, and then we're gonna do another round with me beginning, you middle, me end.
That's right, and it'll be like a relatively short story, just like maybe just a couple sentences each. Okay, so once upon a time, there was a little green plastic man, and he was a little green plastic army soldier, and he found himself amidst a whole bag of green plastic men, uh, and suddenly he noticed he became aware of himself. Pass.
And he wondered, am I the only one aware? And as he struggled to get out of the bag, he realized that the bag was attached to him and it was a parachute. And all he had to do was jump. And so he walked over top of a whole bunch of men, squishing them and just trying to find the light. And once he found a small crack of light, pass.
once he once he saw the small crack of light, he didn't know why, but he intrinsically felt drawn to the light. Maybe it was because he was surrounded in darkness, being stuffed away in that drawer for so long, um, once being a prized possession in the toy chest and shortly forgotten. That crack of light was like the drawer opening, and it was like God's hand herself opening the drawer, and that crack of light soon turned to a cascading, uh, hallway of light that filled the whole room, and it blinded himself completely. The end.
Well done.
It
Uh,
was fun, right?
yeah, yeah,
Did you feel,
okay.
were you feeling the magic in that?
Yeah,
Like
absolutely,
like all
absolutely.
the layers of metaphor and like the risk of maybe uh you know being a little too overly overthinking, and then the risk of being spontaneous,
Mm-hmm.
and yet
Mm-hmm.
I felt like it was completely relevant to like everything.
Yeah, and as I was flowing and telling my part of the story, I was also after I was telling, I was judging. I was like monitoring my story as it was coming out.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so story
Okay, your
number
turn.
two.
Story number two.
Wow. It's hard to get that one out of my head. I gotta shake my head or something. Uh,
Whoosh. Yeah, clear it out, clear it out.
so it was a dark night,
Ooh.
and in the bushes, there's a man standing naked, and in his right hand is a whole bunch of coal mixed with mud, and he is putting this on his naked body in the moonlight and covering his body, getting ready for an event the following morning. And there, in the distance, he can hear drums, beating of drums, and he catches a glimpse of himself as he's putting all this blackness over his body, catches a glimpse of himself in the water, and all he can see are his eyes pass.
Ooh, dang, that's juicy. As he caught a glimpse of himself in his eyes, in the reflection of the water, and as he could hear the rumble of the drums off in the distance, he began to see a vision of his ancient ancestors. And in his vision he could hear them singing the old songs, not the kind of songs that you hear today, but songs that somehow have a deeply haunting echo of an old world of magic. And he sat and he listened to that song as he continued applying the mud, and he felt his ancestors' hands come become his own as they adorned him and blessed him with the ancient symbols of their peoples, symbols of power, symbols of healing, symbols of protection, symbols of knowledge and wisdom pass.
Oh, oh that's and as those symbols entered his mind and his body, suddenly glowing symbols started to appear on his skin, on his armor, and he stood tall and he screamed the songs of his ancestors. And in the distant horizon, he could hear the wolves howling back. And he could also see the sun starting to rise in the east. And he grabbed his weapon, kneeled down to the earth, thanked Mother Gaia for this opportunity to feed his clan. The end.
Damn. So rich, man. There's so much. What I'm really getting out of this, Roger, is like, and I think I'm going to start using it on my cast, is like, there's so much archetypal wisdom and imagery and symbolism and magic and potency available. Because we're participating in active creation ourselves, and because, just generally the way that you and I lean towards is probably more towards like that. I don't want to say spirit, but there's just a kind of there's a kind of a we're leaning into something that, what's the word that I can use that doesn't, maybe you've got
Mystic.
the word. It's mystic. The only reason why I don't want to use mystic is because I feel it excludes people who may not consider themselves mystical, but may resonate with some of those imagery. It's
Mm.
very, I don't know, but it's enlivening for me.
Well, I think it's an innate part of our essence to be able to create like that.
Totally. Like that was fun. That was so
Yeah.
great.
It actually, I was shivering inside when I finished telling the last story. It's cool.
Yes. So good. So good. Yeah, it's the weaving, it's the storytelling, and I think it's a one way that we can relate to things that are happening, whether they're immediately in our families or in our communities or maybe more far away, like what we're seeing on TV. This uh I think especially now, both of us probably being in our middle ages, the archetypes have revealed themselves to us, and it's easier to kind of see the clothing on the over the archetypes, if you know what I
Mhm.
mean.
Mhm.
And not to boil down and make everything so simple as archetypes, but I love this one. I love this one saying, and it was like, the archetypes are alive in us as we are alive in the archetypes, if that makes sense. And
Yeah, and as you say that, I feel that you said maybe not as simple as the archetypes, but it's the blending of the archetypes that creates
mm,
the texture and the color of life.
mm. And I think when someone recognizes an archetypal image, like someone putting mud over their body, or ancient symbols, or drums playing, or ancestors, like there's an archetypal like stirring. in my bones that gets kind of like, ooh, I can relate to it. And because it's a story, I can momentarily pause my judgment on it with my logical mind, like, oh, well, magical symbols don't actually exist or something, something, you know? And that was great, man. Thanks. You helped me remember something that I've been kind of tracking. And that's nice. I needed that. I needed that.
Mhm.
What blew me away is that both stories were so different. Like one was kind of in this like, oh, green plastic army men, like did you play with green plastic army men when you were a kid?
I did. That's where the umbrella thing came from.
Oh, yeah, 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 parachutes,
Because
right?
like I
Yeah,
throw them in my drawer, right? And then you
yeah,
pick
yeah.
one up and there's a whole bunch of men sitting in a parachute.
Oh, that's great. I used to love playing with them. I would play for hours with them, you know,
Mhm.
and but it was just this image, and I had seen that image in a video game not too long ago, and then I just pulled on that thread, and you pulled on it, and suddenly I feel like we were drawing from the greater web, it's like the web of story, the web of archetype, and that's like a modern thing, green little plastic men. Uh, and then
Mhm.
the other story was like very, oh man, like that. Oh, I can feel the shivers now. I was like transported there, right? I can
Mhm.
see it clearly.
That was
Very
very
powerful.
cool.
So I guess the question is, how and when and where, um, and who do we tell those stories with, and how can we leverage them, to, well, for healing for ourselves, healing for our families and communities, healing for all the things that are kind of afoot in the world at large today, And I think a lot of that has to
Mhm.
do with telling a new story.
What about recreating the story? What about bringing it in?
Yeah, can you
What
say, can
about,
you say more about that?
well, so what about going out into the wilderness and, having someone drum? Maybe Marcus is on the drum and there's a guy
Oh, I see
that
what you're saying.
wants to
Recreating it. Yeah,
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 recreate it
totally.
and really
Oh,
feel that
that's
energy.
great. That's so great. You know what you're reminding me of, Roger, is that it's like often I had read this in Black Elk Speaks, and it's like he saw a vision, and then it was his job to reenact that vision as a ritual, as a ceremony with his people.
Hmm.
And then I get excited because I start thinking about my interest in ritual theater and like mask work and ooh, this is great, Roger. You're
Hmm.
giving me a piece into like I've been very lost lately, not knowing what my purpose is and not knowing what to do with the tools that I see. I feel like I don't have the tools that I want to do. I don't have the skills. And but I'm seeing just through what we were doing, it's like, but it's all there. There's just you can draw from it, and you don't
Yeah.
have to be a master to create and to play. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. But you are a master.
You're right,
Uh,
and maybe that's that limiting belief thing, right? And I've been swimming in that limiting belief thing because it's like, you always compare yourself to what other people are doing, and yeah,
well, I think, the thing is I see the masterful part of you when you're playing, when you're being spontaneous, when you're just letting go of these
mm,
ideas of who maybe you should be based out of other people's expectations.
uh,
That where's the safe Marcus live? Because the
mm,
safe Marcus isn't your powerful Marcus, right? And that's
mm,
that's me too.
mm.
And that's a big lesson I've been learning over the last few months.
That's great, Roger. Thanks. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
a real beautiful thread that we're pulling on because I just came off a live cast on my I did two live casts today. One I did a wailing song, to help kind of turn people into tending to their grief and the importance of learning how to recognize when we're feeling numb because of our unprocessed grief. And the second one was called Mother Earth Songs, and I started singing. It's this improvised, interactive sing along for all ages, and I started singing, "What would it be like if I wasn't afraid to show myself?" I was like, "What would it be like if I didn't have to be afraid to show myself? Would people run and hide? Would they head for the hills? 'Cause sometimes I smell a little funny. You know, and like just oh man. And so you're helping to link that to that moment of empowerment that I felt. Um, the moment of where the other story, the limiting story, didn't have such a strong grip on me. And so, thanks for that
Yeah.
affirmation, Roger.
Mhm.
Always a blessing to be witnessed and to have somebody reflect that back to you. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah.
I think that's really important. I mean, you just say that. And I think I try and pride myself on being able to see people. And
Mm,
yeah, and I think it's really important to be seen. And I think because I pride myself on that, I feel amazing when I'm seen. When, it's just not like my physical body's seen,
yeah.
but I mean, when somebody sees my essence, who I really am, like my messy wild hair, how is that relating to the inner core of me, right? Well, how does that play out? And when
Mm.
somebody can see that and say, and not say, oh, it looks like you need a haircut, but they say, oh, I can feel that energy, that vibe that you're putting off, right?
Yeah, that's great. Sorry, I had to laugh there because it reminds me of my mother, where I feel like she's always seeing me how she doesn't want me to be seen.
Mhm.
Wear a nice shirt, fix your hair, shave your mustache. And
Yeah,
how do you want to be seen as, Roger?
well, that's a good question. So, and that's a big thing I've been working on. How do I want to be seen? How I want to be seen isn't necessarily what my mind plays up, the images, the stories that are in my mind. That's not who I am. That's something beyond that. But how I want to be seen is however my divine essence wants to show itself, however it wants to explore, how it wants to share itself, how it wants to move in the world, how it wants to change things, how it wants to create. I just want to be seen as that truth, that essence. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense. It's really difficult to explain.
Mm. You know what's interesting, Roger, is that it does make sense, but I think like you're right. I only got half of the transmission because maybe it was a bit unclear to yourself. And well, what I really appreciate about you is that how you keep tying it back to things that you've been exploring, like you know, um, the connection with the chakras. And I'm not sure where the trigger therapy question came from, but it's I'm sure it's things that you're exploring in your world, and there's something that's in the way that I'm seeing you right now. It's like, and I wonder if this is a phenomenon that that uh, that happens. I mean, I'll give you an example. For me right now, I'm having fun. My throat hurts, and I kind of have to get going soon. So there's some discomfort there, but the questions that you're asking me help me to feel in my element. And and sometimes when I don't feel in my element, I feel like ashamed. I feel small. I feel weak. I feel all the things that I don't want to be seen as. What some people might call the shadow, the dark shadow of yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes when we see other people, or I see other people, I seem to see the shadow that hangs over them. Like in this moment, sometimes I feel like I can, and this is just maybe my projection of my own shadow onto you. But I see some of that. And then there's moments when you just turn and it's like maybe when we see ourselves or when we feel seen, that that shadow that's cast there for a moment suddenly becomes expansive. And and it's happening right now as I'm looking at you, and it's hard to tell if it's my own projection or if it's actually part of our intuitive matrix. And
It's totally your intuitive matrix because I can feel it. I can feel when I'm opening up or like there's
yeah,
like
like it's
this shutter, like a camera shutter, it's opening
yeah, yeah,
more light in, more
yeah.
light in.
Like it's
there's
happening
this.
right now, right?
Yeah,
You kind of feel that opening.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I
So
feel like I can see it in your face, and it's like rooting down, and it's like getting wider and deeper, and
yeah, 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 yeah. It's interesting.
it's very cool.
Let's play one last game,
Okay,
real quick game.
okay, cool.
So, and sometimes we're kind of doing this already, but one of my previous gentlemen I interviewed, actually maybe on the last podcast, he has this game where whenever we're talking to the other person, what we're doing is we're tuning inside to see what we're feeling, and we're saying exactly what we're feeling.
Mm,
So, like right now, I see you looking at me, wondering, and how I'm interpreting how I see you right now is that you're wondering, how is this going to play out? How is this going to? What is the real story here? What is the game that we're actually playing? And how is this, like, that's
mm,
what I feel. It's like there seems to be
mm.
a bit of confusion about how I'm explaining it or something.
Okay, okay. I think I kind of know a game like this. So it's basically as I'm kind of I'm trying to out make speak my perception of
Yes.
what's happening in the moment
Yeah,
as
exactly.
as I'm perceiving you.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, cool.
yeah,
You might be really interested in this body of work called authentic relating games.
yeah,
I'm
I've
not
done
sure
it.
if
Yeah.
yeah, there's some pretty
Mm.
cool stuff in there. Um, Roger, as I'm looking at you, I'm wondering if maybe you felt a little bit defensive when I said authentic relating games, and I'm wondering if you feel maybe be feeling jolly that you're in good company and that I don't really care because and I'm imagining that maybe you're feeling like a sense of curiosity and maybe a growing trust between the way that you and I are able to relate with one another.
That's really good, actually. Yeah, it's
Well,
pretty
it's
close.
because you sang me praises as a master, and I'm just even though I'm not, and I am, and I'm not, I'm just trying on that hat, and I'm like, oh, okay, sure. Roger says I'm a master, so why
Yeah,
not? I'm
like let
rolling
it,
with it.
yeah, flow with it.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
so
funny to be able to. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. It's funny to be
yeah.
able to. Sometimes our intuition is so dialed in, and sometimes my intuition is so out there, like it's just so full of my own distorted perceptions. But I would see guys at
Mhm.
the dog park, and I'm like, "Hey, man, are you in IT? Like, are you in?" And he's like, "Yeah, how'd you know?" And I'd be like, go to his friend, I'm like, "Are you a dancer?" He's like, "I love dancing."
Yeah, yeah. So what I'm noticing as you're doing this is all of a sudden you're experiencing joy, but you crossed your arms. You cross
Uh,
your arms to, like, kind of defend yourself. You're like in this defense stature, not sure if you should fully just explode in Marcus
mm,
flow.
mm. Boom! Well, I am
How's
feeling
that
a lot of.
feel?
It feels good, actually. I mean, I don't know why I was crossing my arms. I mean, it's partly comfortable, partially possibly because I'm kind of starting to close off my energy because I've got to get going. But it felt great to actually share. I'm feeling a lot of joy right now,
Good.
Roger,
Yeah, I can
and
see that.
I want to thank you for helping to mirror aspects of myself back to me in what I found was quite an enlivening and conversation, and I appreciate you for giving me your attention. It's very nice.
I'm really happy you decided to do another podcast after all the podcasts that you're doing and the time you're spending online in front of the camera.
Mm,
Yeah, it's really nice to see you here taking the time.
it's my
Yeah.
pleasure.
Mhm. And I like the wizard in the background.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's the Blue Wizard. Those are part of some of the puppet shows that I've been doing online. The kind of the little music videos. I don't know if you've got to see any of them.
No.
Okay, I'll have to drop one off. It's just a little series that I did called Need a Lift, and basically they're all these different puppets and they're singing together and they're singing little simple uplifting songs. And for some reason, people seem to really enjoy them. I think I got maybe like 1,600 views on one of them, which is like that's
Ni-
locally viral. It's like
Nice.
by no means like going anywhere close to getting viral like on like cat videos. Maybe that's me limiting myself, but it's like, it was nice. People really enjoyed them and they shared them. So
Hmm.
you can check that out
Yeah.
on my Facebook page.
Yeah. So how can people find you?
Oh, you can always connect to me through my Facebook page, Marcus Fung or Marcus.Fung2. You can connect with me through my podcast, which happens, a couple times a week. Or you can look at me up on YouTube, which is Marcus World Bridger. Marcus World Bridger. And I've got a bunch of different projects going on there that you're welcome to check out.
Yeah, and Marcus is very musical. He's very entertaining, and yeah, just a joyful person to be around. So yeah,
Thanks, Roger. It was great to be on
cool.
the show today. I look forward to going back and listening to it. I thought we uncovered some really nice gems.
Yeah, cool, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks, brother.
Okay, man. All the best to you. Thanks for having me on the show.
This podcast is Expansion Cast. Thank you for listening. If it's in your ability to support this podcast, you can do so at patreon.com/expansioncast.